Hello, and welcome back to this space where we talk about the different dilemmas and contradictions in life that we face in our late 20s and 30s. I want this to be a very kind of casual and calming and just friendly space to talk about the stuff that we all encounter in our life when we're at this sort of age and just share how I've been approaching it, not from a point of view of I figured it out, but rather from just a perspective of someone who's on the same journey that might help you feel less alone and more seen and understood. Today's topic I have been thinking about for a while because I've always been an introvert. Always. As long as I can remember myself, I've been very introverted. But my understanding of what an introvert is has changed a lot. And I want to talk about being an introvert in extroverted spaces. It's been quite a journey, actually, to first of all understand myself a bit more as an introvert. And what does that actually show up as? Because I think me as an introvert at 18 versus me now at 28 are two completely different things. Actually, a lot of people would not even assume straight away that I'm an introvert right now, just because my behavior and confidence have changed a lot since. So let's talk about that, and let's start with maybe distinguishing between insecurity and introversion. And I think this is where, honestly, a lot of kind of misconceptions stem about introverts. I think a lot of people assume that, oh, if someone is just shy or quiet or insecure, then they must be introverted. And because of that, being introverted gets equated to being insecure and shy. But it is simply about where you get your energy from. As an introvert, you get your energy from inside or from small interactions like being one-on-one with people, but you need a lot of alone time to recharge and just time to reflect and process things. Whereas as an extrovert, you get energy from being with people. So you enjoy large groups, you enjoy parties and networking and socializing, meeting new people. But because being alone, I think socially is associated with, you can't get friends, or you're just, very insecure. So no one wants to kind of, I don't know, interact with you. That has given introversion a very bad reputation, which makes me feel very passionate about proving that it's not the case, because I've seen the transformation myself, literally firsthand. So let me give you a picture of what I was like at 18 years old and maybe throughout my teenage years as an introvert. I was, first of all, very, very quiet. I was terrified of making calls. I was terrified of coming up to, I don't know, reception at a clinic, like if I had a routine doctor appointment, and saying that I'm here, this is my name. I would always be hoping that my family would do that for me, because it just gave me so much anxiety to think about interacting with people and like making the first step. I also was very scared of upsetting people, very scared of being disliked, very, what's the word? Trying to adapt to every situation and every person that I interact with, because I was so scared that they might not like me. And people pleasing obviously stemmed from that. And I think it was to the extent where it wasn't introversion driving that, it was genuinely the insecurity driving it. So, for example, when I got to uni, and I went to university when I was, I think, 18, because I had to do A-levels when I moved to London. I did that in a year, and then I moved to go to LSE. And at that time, I look back on it, and honestly, I have regret, but not regret in terms of what I did at the time, but I just wish I could be going through that experience with the mindset and the confidence and the values that I have now. So if I could just transport my brain now into the 18-year-old me, I think I would have gotten so much more from it. Because what happened was I got there, and of course, when you first start university, everyone gets very nervous and very anxious to make friends. So you have cliques and little groups forming very quickly, and they're very hard to break into because at the beginning, I think everyone holds on very strongly to whatever friends you met initially because you don't want to be left out and you want to be part of things. You want to be not considered a loser that doesn't have anyone to talk to. Well, I did interact with people, but I wasn't a popular person. And I also found it very hard to find people that I clicked with. And I think that is because at the time I was so lacking in confidence that actually I wouldn't even show my real personality to people. I would have this front, and for me to actually share personal stuff and for me to show a bit more of my quirks and sense of humor, it would take a very long time of getting comfortable to be more myself around someone. And that has kind of meant that I've stayed on the periphery of a lot of friendships for a very long time. And I mean, I was lucky in the sense that despite me being so insecure, I thankfully wasn't bullied, neither through school nor through university. And maybe in some ways the people pleasing nature where I was trying to be on good terms with everyone helped, but that's kind of, I don't know, maybe shifting the focus on the target person, which is not right. I think, you know, you can be doing everything right and still be bullied. I think if I was, I would have found it so much harder to change in the way that I have changed in the 10 years that followed, because being bullied is no joke and it can really, really mess up your life and take years to then untangle and come back to your true self and feeling good again. So all that is to say, I'm very thankful that I wasn't, but I think if you were in a situation where you were, maybe listen to what my journey was with a pinch of salt, because it's understandably very difficult to recover from it. So I have a lot of empathy for going through that, and basically just want to say that I want to send a lot of virtual hugs and love if you were in that situation. And it's not easy to recover from that, and I am sure you can, but it's objectively an incredibly horrible thing to go through. So that caveat aside, when I got to university, I was just very non-proactive. Is there an antonym of proactive? Passive? Yes, I was very passive. I would not make the first move for anything. Not saying hi, not saying, I don't know, oh, can I join you guys? Or, oh, what are you talking about? I didn't have socializing skills. And I was the type of person that would always have, literally throughout my entire childhood and school and everything, I always had a best friend. Maybe except a couple of exceptions where we were a trio of best friends, but I never was part of a group. I kind of aspired to be part of a group, a friendship group, but I was just not the type of person to be included in that. And I think in my mind, in my childhood mind, I always thought that, oh my God, I'm just not cool enough. I'm just not, I don't know, people just don't like me enough to include me. Honestly, looking back, I think now I'm still not really part of a big friendship group. And by big friendship group, I mean people where you're all quite close in a group, not like, oh, you just, gather with friends sometimes and it's a bigger group. But now I understand that that's because I am just introverted and I prefer to have close friendships with people one-on-one or in smaller groups. And big groups are just not exactly my thing. So I don't know if I'll ever be part of a big friendship group where genuinely I'm close friends with everyone. So anyway, I keep oscillating between topics, but also while we're on the chaotic tangent, here's my coffee. It's a cappuccino. You would have guessed it. It always is a cappuccino with oat milk. It's also afternoon, but this is my morning because I had a very massive lion. So I just had breakfast and this is my morning coffee at 2 p.m. Don't judge. Anyway, back to the topic. So in university times, I think I just really didn't let myself be fully me. And that kind of kept me in this little shell the entire time. And it didn't prevent me from meeting my people here and there. The biggest thing that contributed to my social life was joining the Salsa Society at LSE, which I absolutely loved. And I think because there was an activity that connected me to other people, it made it so much easier to actually make friends and eventually build relationships that lasted for a long time. But there were only a handful of those that I had throughout university. And thinking about it now, that's like 3 years of your life and so much potential. And I just really wish I could transport myself to that time and go through those 3 years, but with the ability to approach people, say hi, and initiate a conversation, make friends, be proactive about building a relationship, like suggesting things, and just being able to go through it with more confidence. But I understand looking back that this is one of those formative experiences that lots of people have, where it takes going through those times where you're very in a little shaky phase of your life, trying to form who you are, getting into adulthood, where, things are not great. Quite honestly, I think in terms of confidence and how I felt about myself, the older I get, the better it gets. So when I was in school and then university, this was the peak of me finding flaws in myself and being so incredibly insecure about my body, my face, my skin, my everything, like literally everything, my social skills, but that's probably fair. And I didn't let myself fully absorb the joy and the fulfillment of the experience of going through university at that time, because I was so lacking in confidence. And comparing that to now, because now I'm on a career break and I'm at a university again, and at 28, it's a very different feeling and it's so nice. And I understand that this is not common at all. This is not the thing that you do. And if anything, when I was at my first university, I would hear about people who are approaching 30 or in their 30s going back to education. And I was kind of like, isn't it a bit late, Isn't it weird that you're there with 18-year-olds? Like, it's probably quite lonely. It's probably quite, I don't know, like weird. And you're always excluded, singled out because you're different and you're older. Well, now that I am at approaching 30 sort of age, and I am back to university, I can actually say how incredible it is. And you just absorb and get so much more from it than you would at the younger age. One example of that is, for example, participating in classes and actually being part of a discussion. At the time of my first undergrad, I was just too scared to actually put my hand up and contribute something in class. I think I got a little bit better at it as time went on, but I remember that in first year, even in second year, it took a lot for me to speak. I often would feel very, very nervous to ask any questions in a bigger setting. For example, when it was a lecture and there were a lot of people in the audience, I would never, ever put my hand up to ask a question at the end. In a seminar where it's a small group and it's maybe like 15 people or so, a little bit better, but still not ideal. And still terrified in daily life to call and to, book appointments, to answer the phone as well. Of course, naturally, you have to get better at it as time goes on. But I just had the internal dread of having to do it. And the thing that helped the most is literally practice. It's always just down to practice and doing the thing. And then every time you do the thing, it gets a little bit easier and more familiar the next time you do it. I remember there was a time where I think I was trying to speak more because, this thing that I now know was something that I had to work on throughout the years. At the time, I was already sensing that, like I would love to just be a bit more comfortable speaking and raising my hand. There was one lecture where I think I just told myself that I have to ask a question. And because I was getting so nervous, I was struggling to come up with something. So I told myself, when they open it up for questions, you just put your hand up and then you decide what you're going to ask. But like, don't give yourself time to talk yourself out of it. So I did it, and I was so incredibly nervous. My voice was a little bit shaky, but I asked it and it was absolutely fine. Like, literally a nothing moment. Like, nothing important happened from that, and that it was not as big a deal as I had it in my mind. And then the next time that I did it, it was still making me nervous, but it was a bit better. And that, over the period of 10 years, I think leads to a much more comfortable position where you can actually speak, ask questions, suggest ideas. But the thing I do want to talk about at the same time is maybe not the negative side of introversion, because this, I would say, is like a drawback of it, is that it's so enmeshed with insecurity that it takes a very long time to actually become a confident introvert. But I also had some very good things about being an introvert. For example, moving countries at 17 and being by yourself. And of course, I was going to college, so I had people there. And because I was under 18, there were stricter rules about me being outside of my accommodation that was attached to, not attached physically, but that was the college's accommodation. So you had to get approval to go on trips and all of the other stuff. And there was a curfew, so a time you would need to return by. So I was looked after in that sense, but I was in a new country by myself, and that was weirdly better than I expected. I think when I was about to move, I was kind of thinking that it's very likely that I'm going to have a very tough time for a while before it gets okay. But I think because I was so introverted and I actually really enjoyed alone time, I wouldn't really be bored by myself. I would always have something that I can do alone, like going somewhere, reading, YouTube. YouTube exists? Yeah, YouTube existed, of course. So lots of things that I would just enjoy in my own company. And I think part of the reason why, surprisingly, that transition from one country to another at 17 went okay was because of my introversion. And I think if I was extroverted, I would have had potentially a tougher time, because it takes a while to build a pool of acquaintances and friends. And I think it was just the fact that I was okay with not having that for some time that helped me actually be okay. So that's one positive. The other positive is that I've always enjoyed solo time, like I said, and that made me way more confident at solo traveling, just because I enjoyed being by myself on transport. So one of my favorite things to do still, and it was back then, is being on a train in the UK. And I know not everyone is a fan of UK trains, but I am. And doing a day trip by myself to somewhere with nature by train was one of the things that gave me that fulfillment that really helped me enjoy things much more than I would have otherwise. So that's a very positive side of things. And I feel like even now I notice the difference that introversion makes in terms of me being okay being in a space alone and, you know, sitting with my own thoughts, going to, I don't know, like the cinema by myself. I think those things just take that level of comfort of being by yourself, which introverts have. And it's nice because it allows you to enjoy things even if your social circle maybe is not on the same page as you, or you don't have the right people that would want to do the thing with you, or you simply just want introspection time. It's nice to be in a place where you're comfortable doing it, because I know that there are people who are even in their 30s and maybe might feel nervous to go to something alone because it feels awkward, it feels, lonely. And I know that it's one of the aims of a lot of people to be more comfortable with that. So one shortcut is if you're an introvert, you will more likely be comfortable with that sooner, just because it's your natural habitat. The other thing I want to talk about is work. fast forward, after all the uni stuff, we get into the workplace. And I think I'll talk in particular about my corporate job because it is so catered to extroverts more than any other job I've ever had. And the difference is particularly seen in who gets rewarded and for what. So I worked in consulting for 3.5 years, almost 4, before I took this career break to study dance. And I may return to that job after. We will see what happens. This job in consulting is very heavily network and relationship based because the job itself is reliant on you building relationships with clients and then clients choosing your firm to provide a particular service or help them with a project. So all the revenue that a consulting firm gets relies on senior people, partners, directors, going out there and networking with the company, like CEO -1, CEO -2, like that senior sort of level, who have enough power to commission the work and pay for it. So because the work is so reliant on the selling to people and the people skills, you also kind of assessed on a similar thing, even though it's not said explicitly. But in performance reviews, the thing that matters the most is whether the people on the panel know you, what they think about you, do they trust you, and have they heard about all the work that you've been doing. And what you're presenting is basically a spreadsheet or some sort of slide that has the timeline of everything that you've done in this performance year, and you try and make it sound impactful. That literally feels like writing a CV where you have to collect all the things you have objectively done and then manipulate the language and phrase it in a way that will give you the best chance of getting the thing. And in the case of a CV, it's a job. In the case of this performance review slide, it's a promotion or a good rating. And the visibility is what they call the people knowing about you, people know about your work, often is the deal breaker. Because if you've been doing all the amazing work quietly and no one knows about it, but maybe your manager knows, but no one else in your department knows, then you are very unlikely to get promoted. Just because relationships matter so much, and people making decisions, I think I'm making decisions based on who would be best positioned to be in a more senior role at this company. And it needs to be someone who shouts about their work, is very proactive in building relationships, who is known by senior leadership, whatever grade they're at. There are some analysts who are literally in the entry-level grade, but the leadership know them because they've been so incredibly proactive with getting in touch, talking about what they've been doing, helping with other initiatives. That is very uncomfortable for people who are introverted, because the stuff that gets you to that good books thing in terms of being very, very proactive with people, with being loud about your work, that really doesn't come naturally to us introverted people, because we enjoy literally the exact opposite of that. It's not building many relationships, but building few genuine, authentic relationships that go a bit deeper without the fakeness of, I need something from you strategically, therefore I'm gonna network, therefore da-di-da-di-da. That doesn't feel good to people who are introverted usually, and I'm generalizing just based on me, but let me know if it's different or the same for you. And shouting about your work, maybe that's not exactly an introverted extroverted distinction, but I think probably on average people who are introverted are more likely to be similar to me and not enjoy to do that over the top, shouting about your work thing. You probably enjoy doing your work and talking about it when it makes sense in an organic way, and not that much. You kind of probably wish that you just got promoted based on merit and the actual work that was done, not on communication about the work. Initially, when I got the consulting job and I found out maybe throughout the first year and a half that this is how the system works, I was quite annoyed about it, because I just wished we didn't have to do the whole fake networking thing, the visibility thing, shouting about your work thing. I was kind of feeling like it's so superficial. And it's so unfair. Now that I'm 3.5 years, almost 4 years into the job, and also out of it temporarily now on a career break, so I have space and time to reflect on it, I'm starting to realize that, you know what, as much as it's annoying for us introverts, I do think that it's a very valuable skill set to be able to showcase your work well, to be able to build relationships that are maybe on the overlap of authentic and strategic. So something that would be useful for you. And you also want to know what that person has been up to in terms of work and get to know them a bit better as a person. There is a lot of value to actually not just, ignoring the industries that want you to be a bit more proactive with relationship building, a bit more visible with the work that you're doing. Instead, think, well, maybe I do need to also be able to do that if I need to, because sometimes it is useful. I'm seeing now how, honestly, even outside of consulting and in a lot of industries, in dance even, all of those skills are the things that propel your career forwards, and to ignore them is just a little bit silly. So what has happened throughout my time in a consulting job, but also generally my working time, I started to see how can I both stay true to myself in terms of I am an introvert. I very much would like to stay an introvert. That's just what I am, and I'm happy with it, but also be an introvert that can build relationships strategically when she needs to, that can talk about her work with confidence when she needs to, and that can thrive in a social setting when she wants and needs to. And I think that I have been coming much closer to that. What I would call myself now is a sociable introvert. I don't know if that term exists. Maybe I have coined it. I don't know. But I am very much claiming it because now I think through practicing the relationship building, through building my confidence, through competence, and being just better at what I do and having more experience with what I'm doing. It goes for all the stuff, in a consulting job, you're going to get better at handling it the longer you stay in it. And same goes for any other thing in life, speaking to people, raising your hand, asking a question, all of that improves with practice. And I think now, with 10 years of that intentional trying to make myself feel more confident, I think I got to a place that genuinely feels very enjoyable and much more true to myself. This is what I've been wanting, or like internally meaning to be all along. I just took a long time to come out of my shell a little bit. Okay, change of camera, because my actual camera has been dying many times in a row, and I think my patience is at the limit with the camera. So we're now onto my phone camera, but still the mic audio, so hopefully it's not too bad. Yeah, what I was saying is I think this entire time what my personality was supposed to be is being a sociable introvert, but it took such a long time for me to get out of that insecurity shell to actually be able to thrive as me. And I'm sure that I'll have more changes coming throughout the years, but I think now where I got to is I've realized through maybe being forced by my job that I actually enjoy getting to know new people. There are times where maybe it does get a little bit draining when you have to do the small talk very often and many times in a row, like when you're in a social setting at work, like a work social, naturally. But also there have been times where I am meeting someone new and I'm meeting them one-on-one, even if it's at a work social, but I just catch them where they're alone and I can have a genuine human conversation with them and maybe ask them not just about work stuff, but also like what's going on in their life and get to know them on a more human level. And that has been the golden overlap for me, where I get my introverted bit satisfied, but I also get my sociable bit there and, active. And that I found to be way more fulfilling than either extreme, either being super duper extroverted or being super duper introverted, not actually interacting with people. I've realized that I want an occasional thing where I meet a bunch of people and I am in a bigger group setting, which is a big surprise to me because I've never thought that I would ever enjoy that. And I think now, having come a long way, I can really see how you can be really, really introverted and also still pretty good at social stuff. And so can you. If you've been on a similar journey to me, you can also get to the point where you enjoy both things. And I would really, really say that I don't think I've gotten any less introverted. That's the important distinction, because I was wondering before whether these changes that I've had over the past 10 years, does that mean that I've just moved more towards the center on the introvert to extrovert spectrum? And I think no. I think I'm just as introverted. I would just as much enjoy a whole week away by myself on a solo trip now as I did back then. But I have revealed to myself just how fulfilling social interactions can be, even with new people, even in an unfamiliar setting, how fun it is to be actively participating in things and asking questions and being part of a discussion. It's so nice to have the freedom to do that when you want to, and also take the backseat and be a listener when you want to, because naturally, like a lot of us, I tend to be a listener and an observer when it's a very busy social setting. So I won't necessarily be jumping in, trying to make space for me to speak. So this is how it's been going. I am realizing the merit to adapting a little bit to the spaces that are catering to extroverts, because as much as you can be in annoyance, in denial, it's not going to help you get far in your career if you just refuse to adapt and refuse to learn those new skills. I do think those skills are very important and valuable for us introverts to actually consider and see how much of your introversion is down to introversion and how much of it is down to lack of confidence and insecurity. And I want to also say that, of course, I'm just one person out of so many. I don't know what the proportion actually is in terms of introverts to extroverts statistically, but I'd imagine it's half and half-ish. I don't know. And everyone will be different. So you might be much more introverted than me by the sounds of it. You might genuinely not like and be drained by any big social interaction. So that's why it is a spectrum and things can change. And, you might be way more preferring off alone time and need it much more than me. I need alone time for sure, and I start to feel it when I don't have it, but I also need a little bit of social stuff. Maybe not need, maybe I want that, because I need solo time. I genuinely need it, otherwise I go crazy. But I don't think I necessarily need big social stuff, but I do want it now that I enjoy it, now that I've learned to enjoy it. I would love to know where you're at on the introvert to extrovert spectrum. And also if you've had any changes throughout the past years of how confident / anxious / whatever else you are, and what helped to change that. What was it? Was it your intentional practice trying to change it? Was it the circumstances? Was it anything else? And I will see you in the next one. Bye.